You know what's screwing up your life right now? It's not your failures. It's the crap you're telling yourself about those failures. I spent 50 years as a psychologist, and I can tell you, every person sitting frozen, afraid to try something new, isn't afraid of failing. They're afraid of what they think failure means about them. And that thinking, it's complete nonsense. Let me show you the exact lie your brain is selling you. Look, I know exactly where you are right now. You've got something you want to do, maybe start a business, have a difficult conversation, put yourself out there, but you're frozen. And you're frozen because you're thinking, what if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if I prove I'm not good enough? Here's what most people won't tell you. Those thoughts aren't facts. They're beliefs, irrational beliefs. And irrational beliefs create irrational emotions that lead to irrational behavior, like staying stuck. For 50 years, I help people break free from this exact pattern, not through positive affirmations or pretending failure doesn't hurt, but through understanding the specific lie your brain tells you and how to dismantle it completely. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what that lie is, why your brain keeps telling it, and the precise mental tools to shut it down for good. So let's start with something most people completely miss. Most people think it works like this. Something bad happens, you fail at something, and boom, you feel terrible. Event leads to emotion. Simple, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. And this misunderstanding is what keeps people trapped. Here's what's actually happening. There's a missing step that your brain sneaks in so fast you don't even notice it. It's actually like this. Activating event, then belief, then consequence. ABC. The ABC model. And that belief in the middle, that's where all the damage happens. Let me give you an example. You fail a test. That's A, the activating event. Then you feel worthless. That's C, the consequence, the emotion. But here's the thing. The test didn't make you feel worthless. Your belief about failing the test made you feel worthless. Your brain went, I failed this test, which means I'm stupid, which means I'm worthless. That's the B, the belief. And here's the kicker. The event itself, the failing, it's actually neutral. It doesn't mean anything until your brain adds meaning to it. Your brain is like a narrator telling you a story about what happened, and most of the time, that story is complete garbage. I'll prove it to you. Two people fail the same test. Exact same test, same score, everything identical. One person feels disappointed, studies harder, moves on. The other person feels devastated, thinks they're stupid, and quits. Same A, same activating event, but different B, different beliefs. And because the beliefs are different, the C, the consequences, the emotions and behaviors, they're totally different. So you're not a victim of your circumstances. You're a victim of your own thinking. And once you really get that the B is where the problem lives, everything changes. Because you can't always control what happens to you, but you can absolutely change what you believe about what happens to you. Now, your brain doesn't just throw random beliefs at you. It tends to use 3 specific types of irrational beliefs. And these 3 types, they're like poison. They show up everywhere. First type is demands. Your brain takes a preference and turns it into an absolute demand. Instead of I'd prefer to succeed, it goes, I must succeed. I have to succeed. I absolutely should succeed. The universe owes me success. You hear that language? Must, should, have to, ought to. That's demand language. And demands set you up for massive emotional disturbance because reality doesn't care what you demand. Reality does what it does. Second type is awfulizing. This is when your brain takes something bad and makes it into a catastrophe. It's not just bad that I failed. It's awful. It's terrible. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. I call this awfulizing because you're making it more awful than it actually is. Something can be bad, inconvenient, disappointing without being awful. Awful means 100% bad, nothing good about it. Worst possible scenario. Most things aren't awful. They're just bad. Third type is what I call self-rating or global rating. This is when your brain takes one behavior and uses it to rate your entire self. I failed at this thing, therefore I'm a failure. I did something stupid, therefore I am stupid. You're taking a complex human being with thousands of traits and behaviors and reducing them down to one global rating based on one event. It's idiotic, but your brain does all the time. So when you fail at something, your brain usually hits you with all three. I must not fail. That's the demand. This is awful. That's the awfulizing. And I'm a failure. That's the self-rating. Boom, boom, boom. No wonder you feel terrible. No wonder you're frozen. But here's the thing, and I want you to really hear this. These beliefs, they feel true. They feel like facts. Your brain presents them to you as if they're reality. But they're not. They're interpretations. They're stories. And they're irrational stories that don't hold up under examination. Let me tell you something from my own life. When I was young, I was terrified of approaching women. Terrified. And my brain was telling me, if I approach a woman and she rejects me, that means I'm worthless. That's awful. I can't stand it. Classic irrational beliefs, all three types. So you know what I did? I went to the Bronx Botanical Garden, and I forced myself to approach woman after woman after woman. I approached over 100 women in 1 month. You know how many said yes to a date? 1. You know how many showed up to the date? 0. But here's what I learned. I survived. The rejection didn't kill me. It was uncomfortable, sure, but it wasn't awful. It didn't mean I was worthless. It meant I got rejected. That's it. And once I proved to myself that I could handle it, the fear lost its power. That's the power of seeing the bee. Once you identify the irrational belief, you can challenge it. You can test it. You can prove to yourself it's nonsense. Now let me get specific about the lies your brain tells you about failure, because there are 3 big ones, and they're all connected to those irrational beliefs I just mentioned. Lie number 1, failure means something about my worth. Your brain says, if I fail, I'm a failure. If I succeed, I'm worthy. If I mess up, I'm worthless. It ties your value as a human being to your performance. And this is complete crap. Here's the truth. You're a complex human being who sometimes succeeds and sometimes fails. Period. That's it. Rating yourself based on one performance, or even a bunch of performances, is like rating an entire restaurant based on one dish they served one night. It makes no sense. Think about it. You're a person with thousands of traits, thousands of behaviors, thousands of interactions. Some of them are good, some are bad, most are neutral. How the hell can you take all of that complexity and reduce it down to one rating? I'm good or I'm bad. I'm worthy or I'm worthless. You can't. It's logically impossible. But your brain does it anyway. And the damage this does is enormous. Because if you believe that failing means you're a failure, you'll avoid anything where you might not excel. You'll play it safe. You'll shrink your life down to only the things you're already good at. And you'll miss out on growth, on learning, on new experiences, all because you're protecting this imaginary rating that doesn't even exist. Line number 2, I can't stand failure. Your brain says, this is unbearable. I can't handle this. If I fail, I'll fall apart. I won't be able to stand it. This is what I call low frustration tolerance, and it's everywhere. Here's the truth. If it were truly unbearable, you'd be dead. Seriously. Unbearable means you cannot bear it. You cannot survive it. But you're still here. So clearly you can bear it. You don't like it. It's uncomfortable. It's disappointing. It sucks. But you can stand it. Your brain confuses discomfort with disaster. It takes an unpleasant feeling and turns it into an emergency. And when you believe you can't stand something, you avoid it. You quit early. You don't even try. Because why would you voluntarily do something you think you can't stand? But here's the thing. Growth happens in discomfort. Learning happens when you push past what's easy. If you're only doing things you can comfortably do, you're not growing. You're stagnating. I had a client once, brilliant guy, who wanted to start a business. He had the skills, the knowledge, the resources, but he wouldn't start. Why? Because he might fail, and he couldn't stand the thought of failing. Couldn't stand it. I said to him, what do you mean you can't stand it? What would happen if you failed? He said, I'd feel terrible. I'd be embarrassed. People would judge me. And I said, okay, so you'd feel uncomfortable. You'd have some unpleasant emotions. You'd have some social discomfort. And? He looked at me like I was crazy. And what? And then you'd move on. You'd learn something. You'd try again or try something different. You'd still be alive. You'd still be you. He finally started the business. It didn't succeed the way he wanted. He made mistakes. He had some failures. And guess what? He stood it. He handled it. It wasn't fun, but it didn't destroy him. And he learned more in that 1 year than he'd learned in the previous 10 years of playing it safe. Line number 3, failure is catastrophic. Your brain says, this is awful. This is terrible. This is the worst thing that could happen. It's a catastrophe. And this is probably the most common lie of all. Here's the truth. Most things that feel catastrophic aren't catastrophic. They're bad. They're inconvenient. They're disappointing. But they're not catastrophes. A catastrophe is 100% bad with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Losing every single person you love in a sudden disaster. That's a catastrophe. Failing a presentation? Not a catastrophe. Bombing a job interview? Not a catastrophe. Having a business fail? Major setback, yes. Catastrophe, no. Your brain has this tendency to blow things out of proportion. It takes a bad event and makes it into the end of the world. And when you believe something is catastrophic, you respond with catastrophic emotions. Panic, despair, paralysis. Because why wouldn't you? If something truly catastrophic is happening or might happen, those responses make sense. But when you're treating a disappointment like a catastrophe, you're creating way more suffering than the situation warrants. You're making it worse with your thinking. I remember working with a student who was convinced that failing one exam would be catastrophic. She was having panic attacks before tests. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I asked her, what would actually happen if you failed? She said, I'd have to retake the class. I said, and? She said, it would delay my graduation. I said, and? She said, I'd feel embarrassed. I said, and? She couldn't come up with anything else. So we looked at it rationally. Failing one exam would be inconvenient. It would cost her some time and money. It would be embarrassing. On a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being a true catastrophe, where would this fall? She thought about it and said maybe a 30. Maybe. And just seeing that, just realizing that she'd been treating a 30 like it was a 100, that shifted something for her. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable because she stopped lying to herself about how bad it would actually be. Now, here's where people get stuck. They hear all this and they go, okay, Albert, I get it. These beliefs are irrational, but I still feel like they're true. I know logically that failing doesn't make me worthless, but it feels like it does. What do I do about that? Great question. And this is where most therapy and most self-help completely fails. Because knowing something intellectually isn't enough. Your brain is really good at defending its irrational beliefs. It's like a lawyer building a case, collecting evidence, ignoring anything that contradicts the story it wants to tell. So let me show you the tricks your brain uses to make you keep believing the lies, even when you know better. First trick, confirmation bias. Your brain looks for evidence that supports your belief and ignores evidence that contradicts it. So if you believe you're a failure, your brain will scan your entire life for examples of times you failed. See? There's one. There's another one. Look at all this evidence that proves I'm a failure. Meanwhile, it completely ignores the times you succeeded, the times you did well, the times you handled things competently. That evidence doesn't fit the story, so your brain just tosses it out. It's like a prosecutor who hides evidence that would prove the defendant innocent. Completely dishonest, but your brain does it automatically. Second trick, emotional reasoning. This is when your brain goes, I feel like a failure, therefore I am a failure. I feel worthless, therefore I must be worthless. It treats your feelings as if they're facts. But feelings aren't facts. Feelings are consequences of your beliefs. Remember the ABC model. If you have an irrational belief, you're going to have an irrational emotion. That emotion doesn't prove the belief is true. It just proves you believe it. It's like saying, I feel like there's a monster under my bed, therefore there must be a monster under my bed. The feeling is real. The monster isn't. Third trick, overgeneralization. Your brain takes one failure and makes it mean everything. I failed this presentation becomes I always fail becomes I'm a failure at life. One data point becomes a universal truth. It's absurd, but it happens all the time. I had a client who gave one bad presentation at work and was convinced he was incompetent at his job. One presentation. I asked him, how many presentations have you given in your career? He said, hundreds. I said, and how many of those were bad? He said, well, this one, and maybe one or two others. So out of hundreds of presentations, you've had 3 bad ones, and that means you're incompetent? He laughed when he said it out loud. It sounded ridiculous, but that's what his brain was. Fourth trick, mind reading. Your brain tells you what other people are thinking. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent now. Everyone's judging me. Everyone sees me as a failure. Really? You're psychic now? You can read minds? Because I've been a psychologist for 50 years, and I still can't read minds. The truth is, you're probably 90% wrong about what other people are thinking. Most people are too busy worrying about themselves to spend much time thinking about you. And the ones who are judging you harshly, they're usually dealing with their own irrational beliefs and insecurities. I had a student who was convinced that after she stumbled over her words in class, everyone thought she was stupid. So I suggested she ask them. She was terrified, but she did it. You know what she found out? Most people didn't even notice. The ones who did notice forgot about it 5 minutes later. Nobody thought she was stupid. It was all in her head. So your brain is lying to you, and it's backing up those lies with fake evidence. It's cherry-picking data, treating feelings as facts, overgeneralizing, and pretending to know what other people think. And all of this makes the irrational beliefs feel true, even when they're not. So what do you do about it? How do you actually fight back against these lies and these tricks? This is where we get to the practical tools, the stuff you can actually use. The process I developed is called disputation, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You dispute your irrational beliefs. You argue with them. You challenge them. You put them on trial and cross-examine them until they fall apart. Most people try to ignore their irrational thoughts or replace them with positive affirmations. That doesn't work. If you're thinking I'm worthless and you just try to tell yourself I'm amazing, your brain's not going to buy it. It's going to go, you're right, nice try. But if you actively challenge the belief, if you demand evidence and logic, if you really interrogate it, that's when it starts to crumble. Here's how it works. Step 1. Detect the irrational belief. When you feel a disproportionate emotion like massive anxiety, deep depression, rage out of nowhere, ask yourself, what am I telling myself right now? What's the thought behind this feeling? And look for the language of irrational beliefs. Shoulds, musts, have tos, awfuls, terribles, can'ts. That language is a red flag. If you hear yourself thinking, I must succeed, or it would be awful if I failed, or I can't stand this, you found an irrational belief. Step 2, debate the belief. And you do this by asking 4 questions. Question 1, where's the evidence? Show me the proof that you must succeed. Show me the evidence that failing would be awful. Show me the data that proves you're worthless if you fail. Almost always, there's no evidence. The belief is just an assumption, a story, a demand you're placing on reality. Question 2, where's the logic? Even if you'd prefer to succeed, how does that logically mean you must succeed? Even if failing would be bad, how does that logically mean it would be awful, catastrophic, 100% terrible? Follow the logic and it falls apart. Question 3, does this belief help me? Does believing I must succeed make me more likely to succeed? Usually no. It usually makes you anxious and paralyzed. Does believing failure would be awful help you take action? No. It makes you avoid risk. Does believing you're worthless if you fail motivate you? No. It crushes you. Question 4. What's a more rational alternative? Instead of I must succeed, how about I'd strongly prefer to succeed, but I don't have to? The universe doesn't owe me success. Instead of this would be awful, how about this would be bad and disappointing, but not the end of the world? Instead of I'm worthless if I fail, how about I'm a fallible human being who sometimes fails and sometimes succeeds, and that's okay? You see how that works? You're not just replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. You're actually examining the irrational belief and constructing a rational alternative based on evidence and logic. Step 3, define the effect. Ask yourself, how would I feel if I believed the rational alternative instead of the irrational belief? If instead of thinking I must succeed, I thought I'd prefer to succeed, but I don't have to, how would I feel? Probably less anxious. Probably more willing to try. If instead of thinking failure is awful, I thought failure is disappointing but manageable. How would I feel? Probably less terrified, probably more resilient. And here's the key insight. You'd feel disappointed instead of devastated. You'd feel concerned instead of panicked. You'd feel uncomfortable instead of crushed. And disappointment, concern, discomfort, those are workable emotions. Those don't paralyze you. Those are actually appropriate responses to setbacks. Devastation, panic, feeling crushed, those are consequences of irrational beliefs, and they stop you from functioning. Step 4, do anyway. This is the behavioral component, and it's crucial. Knowledge isn't enough. You can dispute your beliefs all day long, but until you act against them, they'll keep coming back. So you have to deliberately do the thing you're afraid to fail at. You have to put yourself in situations where failure is possible, even likely, because that's how you prove to yourself at a gut level that you can handle it. I used to give my clients what I called shame-attacking exercises. I'd have them do deliberately embarrassing things in public, sing loudly on the subway, ask for something ridiculous at a store, wear mismatched clothes, anything that would trigger their irrational beliefs about what other people think. And you know what happened? They survived. They felt uncomfortable, sure, but they didn't die. People didn't attack them. The world didn't end. And by facing that discomfort repeatedly, they built up a tolerance. They proved to themselves that they could stand things they thought they couldn't stand. I did this myself. I used to be terrified of public speaking, believe it or not. Me, a guy who made a living talking to people. But I had this irrational belief that if I screwed up in front of an audience, it would be awful and everyone would think I was a fraud. So I started speaking everywhere I could. I deliberately put myself in situations where I might mess up. And guess what? I messed up. A lot. I lost my train of thought. I said stupid things. I got heckled. And I survived every single time. The more I did it, the less power the fear had over me. Because I kept proving my irrational belief wrong. That's the power of disputation plus action. You challenge the belief intellectually, then you challenge it behaviorally. And eventually, your brain gets the message and stops feeding you the same lies. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, Albert, this all sounds great. But what about real consequences? What if failure actually does hurt me? What if I lose money, or lose a job, or damage a relationship? Those are real things. Are you saying I should just not care? No, I'm not saying that at all. Let's talk about real consequences versus imagined catastrophes, because this is important. Not all failure is equal. Some failures have real, practical consequences. You lose money. You lose a job. You damage your reputation. A relationship ends. These are real things that affect your life in tangible ways. I'm not denying that. But here's the distinction. Those are practical problems, not existential threats. They're challenges you have to deal with, not proof of your worthlessness. And this is where people get confused. They conflate the two. If you lose your job, that's a practical problem. You need income. You need to find another job or another source of money. That's a real consequence that requires real action. But your brain wants to make it more than that. Your brain wants to say, I lost my job, which means I'm incompetent, which means I'm a failure, which means I'm worthless. That's the irrational part. The rational response to losing your job is, this sucks. I don't like this. I'm disappointed and stressed. Now what do? How do I solve this practical problem? That's a healthy response. The irrational response is, this is terrible. I can't stand this. I'm ruined. My life is over. That response doesn't help you solve the problem. It just makes you feel worse and paralyzes you. Same with losing money. It's a practical problem. You need to adjust your budget, make more money, maybe change your lifestyle. Those are actions you can take. But if you're sitting there thinking, I'm a failure, I'm worthless, I can't stand this, you're not going to take those actions effectively. You're going to be too busy wallowing in irrational emotion. Here's a question I ask people all the time. If the worst happens, can you still be okay? Not happy, not thrilled, but okay. Can you survive? Can you function? Can you move forward? And the answer is almost always yes. You might not like it. It might be hard. It might take time and effort, but you can be okay. Your brain insists the answer is no. Your brain says, if this happens, I'll be destroyed. I'll never recover. My life will be ruined. That's the lie. That's the catastrophizing. And it's almost never true. I lost my first practice, had to rebuild from scratch. It was a real consequence. It was difficult. It was stressful. But was it awful? Was it unbearable? Did it make me worthless? No. It was a setback. A major setback. But it was also a learning experience. And I came back from it. I worked with entrepreneurs who lost everything and started over. I worked with people who went through devastating divorces. I've worked with people who failed publicly and spectacularly. And the ones who recovered, they were the ones who separated the practical consequences from the existential catastrophizing. They said, this is bad. This is really bad. But I can handle it. I don't like it, but I can stand it. This doesn't make me worthless. It makes me someone dealing with a difficult situation. And that framing, that rational response, that's what allowed them to move forward. Now let me tell you about something that might be the most important concept I'm going to share with you. It's called unconditional self-acceptance. And it's the ultimate antidote to all three lies your brain tells you about failure. Unconditional self-acceptance means you accept yourself fully, completely, as a fallible human being, regardless of your performance, regardless of whether other people approve of you, regardless of what happens in your life. You just accept yourself. Now, this is not self-esteem. Self-esteem goes up and down based on how well you're doing. You succeed, your self-esteem goes up. You fail, it goes down. It's conditional. It's based on performance. And that makes it fragile. Unconditional self-acceptance doesn't fluctuate. It's stable because it's not based on anything external. It's based on a simple truth. I'm a human being, and human beings are too complex to rate globally. It's also not arrogance or narcissism. I'm not saying you're perfect or better than everyone else. I'm saying you're a person, a complex, multifaceted person with strengths and weaknesses, successes and failures, good qualities and bad qualities. And you accept all of it. And it's not accepting bad behavior. You can accept yourself and still want to improve. You can say, I accept myself as I am, and I'm working on being better. Those two things don't contradict each other. In fact, accepting yourself makes it easier to improve because you're not carrying around all this shame and self-hatred. Here's what unconditional self-acceptance looks like in practice. You rate your behaviors as good or bad, helpful or unhelpful, effective or ineffective. But you never rate yourself. You never say, I'm good or I'm bad. You say, I did something good or I did something bad. Huge difference. Because you're not your behaviors. You're a person who engages in behaviors. Some of those behaviors are great. Some are terrible. Most are somewhere in between. And all of that is part of being human. Think about it mathematically. How could you possibly take a human being with thousands of traits, thousands of behaviors, thousands of experiences, and reduce all of that complexity down to one single rating? Good or bad? Worthy or worthless? It makes no logical sense. You're too complex to rate. But when you accept that, when you really get that you can't be globally rated, something amazing happens. Failure loses its sting. Because failure is just a behavior, an outcome. It's not a statement about your worth. You can fail at something and still accept yourself fully. And that's incredibly freeing. Because now you can take risks. You can try new things. You can put yourself out there. Because even if you fail, even if you mess up, even if you look stupid, it doesn't threaten your core acceptance of yourself. Paradoxically, you actually perform better when you have unconditional self-acceptance. Because you're not paralyzed by fear. You're not spending all your mental energy protecting your ego. You can focus on the task itself. I've seen this with athletes, performers, entrepreneurs, students, everyone. The ones who accept themselves unconditionally are the ones who take the biggest risks, learn the fastest, and bounce back from setbacks the quickest. Because they're not afraid of failure. They don't like it. They prefer. So how do you practice unconditional self-acceptance? You start by catching yourself when you rate yourself globally. Anytime you think, I'm stupid, you stop and correct it. I did something stupid. My behavior was stupid. But I'm not stupid. I'm a person who sometimes does stupid things and sometimes does smart things. Anytime you think, I'm a failure, you stop and correct it. I failed at this. This attempt didn't work. But I'm not a failure. I'm a person who sometimes fails and sometimes succeeds. You separate your behavior from your identity. Your behavior is what you do. Your identity is who you are. And who you are is a complex, fallible, worthwhile human being who can't be summed up by any single trait or outcome. And you remind yourself over and over, I'm a person who sometimes succeeds and sometimes fails. That's it. That's all failure means. It doesn't mean anything about my worth. It doesn't mean anything about my value. It just means I tried something and it didn't work out. End of story. I had to learn this myself. For years, I tied my worth to my professional success. If my theories were accepted, I was valuable. If they were criticized, I was worthless. And that made me defensive, rigid, afraid to be wrong. Then I realized how irrational that was. My theories are my work, not myself. They could be good or bad, right or wrong, and that doesn't change my worth as a person. Once I accepted that, I became so much more open to feedback, to criticism, to new ideas, because it wasn't threatening anymore. That's the power of unconditional self-acceptance. It frees you. It allows you to be fully human, which means fully fallible without it destroying you. So let me bring this all together for you, because I want you to walk away from this video with something you can use today. Here's what we covered. Your brain tells you 3 lies about failure. First, that failure means something about your worth. It doesn't. You're too complex to rate based on any performance. Second, that you can't stand failure. You can. You just don't like it. There's a big difference. Third, that failure is catastrophic. It's not. It's disappointing, inconvenient, sometimes painful, but it's not the end of the world. These lies come from irrational beliefs that your brain sneaks between events and your emotions. The ABC model shows you this clearly. Activating event, belief, consequence. Change the B, you change the C. Change your beliefs, you change your emotions and your behavior. Your brain backs up these lies with fake evidence. Confirmation bias, emotional reasoning, overgeneralization, mind reading. Once you see these tricks, they lose their power. You stop believing the story your brain is telling you. The solution is disputation. You actively challenge your irrational beliefs using logic and evidence. Where's the proof? Where's the logic? Does it help me? What's a more rational alternative? You put your beliefs on trial and cross-examine them until they fall apart. Then you act against those beliefs. You do the thing you're afraid to fail at. You put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You prove to yourself that you can handle what you thought you couldn't handle. Knowledge plus action equals change. And underneath it all is unconditional self-acceptance. You're a complex human being who can't be globally rated. You'll succeed sometimes. You'll fail sometimes. That's life. That doesn't make you good or bad. It makes you human. And when you accept that fully, failure stops being a threat to your worth and starts being just an outcome you can learn from. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about something you've been avoiding because you might fail. Got it? Good. Now ask yourself, what's the irrational belief here? What's the lie my brain is telling me? Is it I must succeed? Is it would be awful if I failed? Is it I couldn't stand failing? Is it failure would mean I'm worthless? Dispute it. Where's the evidence for that belief? Where's the logic? Does it help you or hurt you? What would be a more rational way to think about it? Then, and this is crucial, do the thing anyway. Take the shot. Have the conversation. Start the project. Apply for the job. Whatever it is, do it. Prove to yourself that you can handle whatever happens. Because you can. I've seen thousands of people do exactly this. You're no different. You're just as capable of challenging your irrational beliefs and taking action despite your fear. The only difference between you and someone who's already doing this is that they started. They took the first step. So take yours. Today. Right now. Don't wait until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. Don't wait until the fear goes away. It won't. You act despite the fear. You act despite the irrational beliefs. And then, through action, you prove those beliefs wrong. Now, there's one more thing your brain does that's even more destructive than lying about failure. It's called awfulizing, and it doesn't just affect how you handle failure. It affects how you handle everything in your life. Your relationships, your career, the daily stress levels. And most people have no idea they're doing it constantly. I break down exactly what awfulizing is and how to stop it in my next video. Click it now, because once you understand this pattern, you'll see it everywhere and you'll finally know how to shut it down. Go watch it.